Revo Labs wireless microphones are not affected by the FCC changes, period. Our wireless mics operate in the 1.9 gigahertz range, not the 700 megahertz range. Revo Labs wireless microphones have no problem.
Bosch Communication Systems, a business unit of Bosch Security Systems, is now one of the world's leading manufacturers and suppliers of professional audio, wireless, life safety, and communication equipment. Bosch Communication Systems offers complete system solutions for the world's most critical high-profile installations and events. Together, the future sounds secure.
Reading the popular press, you might get the impression that it's all over for wireless microphones. This isn't true. Sabine has been producing a microphone system, the SWM-7000, for more than 5 years that operates an entirely different frequency band that is completely unaffected by these recent changes. The SWM-7000 meets the most stringent professional requirements for sound quality. In addition, it offers 70 simultaneous channels. Sabine's SWM-7000 series wireless microphones operate in the 2.4 gigahertz band. Sabine has also recently received approvals from our testing agency that permits us to begin production of a new series, the SWM-6000, that will be similar but transmit in the 915 ISM band. This is also outside of the digital TV changeover. It's not the end of the world. Sabine has a solution, and we're shipping now.
Welcome back to our continuing discussion on digital television.
So why are we doing this? What's the real benefit of this transition to digital television?
The benefits to the industry and the public is that we're reclaiming bandwidth that can be used for other purposes by moving television stations out of the 700 megahertz band into other channel allocations. And this will open up business segments for WiMAX, Wi-Fi, 700 megahertz uses in general.
What's WiMAX? I've never heard of that term before.
WiMAX is high-speed internet or high-speed data service of some type over a large geographical area, not just a small node within a facility, but a large geographic region, a town, a county, something like that.
Now, when you say we're moving television out of this bandwidth, the 700 megahertz bandwidth, are we losing broadcast stations? Are we going to have greater density in terms of stations? Are we using stations using more or less bandwidth now than in the analog realm?
We're just think of bandwidth as a street address. We are depopulating a block in a neighborhood of television stations and moving them to other addresses so that that block can be used for other uses.
Okay, so essentially this was a dual-purpose function. One was to...
The FCC will give bandwidth to EMS, first responder type organizations to help increase their radio needs. In our state of heightened security, we find that many police, fire, first responders all need more bandwidth, more radio support, etc. And the way to make that space for them is to move the television stations.
And as I understand it, then the FCC has been able to auction off a lot of this 700 megahertz bandwidth space to cell phone companies, wireless telephone companies, and such.
Yes, they've licensed it, sold off a tremendous bunch of bandwidth for wonderful prices that will hopefully do something for all of us someday. But it's all gone to free enterprise to use as they see fit, except for a few certain chunks that are restricted for that EMS first responder type scenario.
So some of that 700 megahertz band is going to be emergency services.
Yes.
And then
But then there's also room for, wireless mics. There's all chunks of white spaces that can be used by different facilities, etc.
Now, as I understand it, in the 700 megahertz bandwidth, the FCC is basically pulling the license or telling every user of wireless microphones that they have to shut off in that band.
That 700 megahertz band has actually been populated by wireless microphones.
Wireless mics, in-ear monitors, assistive listening systems and such.
So we're going to lose that space and then be crowded down into the sub-700 megahertz band.
That's correct.
The resultant will be
we have lots of wireless microphone systems out there that are going to become useless.
But I think that's probably an open point for discussion that all of us industry folks need to watch is, what is the FCC going to do? Are they really going to force everyone to shut off what they're doing, what they've purchased and have been using for years? I think it's an open point for discussion going forward, especially, the FCC changed their mind 3 times on the DTV transition and pushed the date and pushed the date and little lobbying here and push the date. I think the audio industry stands a lot to gain by banding together and going to bat for their customers and saying, well, hey, we were here first.
That's a good point, and I think the FCC may push the date a little bit because it's kind of come up and shocked everybody that this is actually
wasn't
happening.
This really like an 11th hour? Didn't this just happen in early November?
Well, I think manufacturers of wireless microphones have known about it for a couple years now and have stopped producing product in that band, but the problem is there's still a lot of product out there that's in use today and that's still viable product except for this problem. But the FCC has auctioned off that bandwidth, and there is no more white spaces in that 700 megahertz bands for the wireless mic to operate. Okay, so whether it happens sooner or later, it will happen, and that will go away.
The assumption is that once people have purchased the right to use that bandwidth, once they actually start using it, it would be difficult for us to utilize it because we'd be trying to use space that's occupied.
Those devices that they're using are going to overpower the transmit power of our wireless microphones, yeah.
So essentially we're looking at wireless microphone users being crowded into a band, losing basically 100 megahertz of bandwidth.
Yeah, essentially, yes. And what's going to happen is now we need to now take all these devices that we have out there and repopulate them down into the sub-700 megahertz bandwidth. And on top of that, now we have to compete with brand new devices that are unlicensed in the market.
Higher power, unlicensed.
Yes.
And I believe that topic is going to be covered in another segment, how we're going to share our bandwidth for what we've always assumed was our bandwidth, because wireless microphone users have essentially worked in between broadcast television stations. So we'll continue to do this and now have to share with other folks. Thank you for watching this segment of Sound and Communications Viewpoint. We're going to revisit some of these topics in another segment in 2 weeks. I'm Jay Paul, Jerry Budge from Blonder Tongue, Darren Cheshier from SKC. Thank you for watching.